Today we are on the very windy south coast of England with the brand new Nikon Z7. Now they've given me this camera with the new 35mm 1.8 and a 2470 f4. Now I'm sure you've seen a lot of specs already about this camera. There's multiple reviews and blogs up all about the specs of this, and we've got them all on the website too. However, just a quick rundown. This is the higher megapixel out of the two new Z series Nikon have brought out. This is the 47 megapixel. We've got 493 AF points, 9 frames per second this can do. It's got 4K at 30p, really nice ergonomics, obviously the new mount on there, so let's see what it can do. We've made our way down to the Studland Peninsula, and this will be a great place to check out the 2470. We've got a little bit of sun now, so hopefully we'll get some interesting light going on. Aww. There's a little dog playing with its owner out there, and I've got only the 2470 on, so I couldn't get too close. So the dog was very small in the frame, and he was right to the left of the frame, really at the very edge. So I just snapped that picture because I want to see how sharp it is right to the edge, see if there's any sort of image quality loss right to the edge, because obviously the 2470 is probably going to be the lens that a lot of people use with the Z series for a long time, and actually it looked pretty sharp to me. Obviously I'm looking at it at the back of the screen, but it doesn't seem to be any fringing or anything like that. Seems pretty snug there. So nice when you've got a pretty landscape like this anyway, and it's a bit more interesting today because the light's a bit odd and the clouds and stuff, but having 3 horses walk through it, and I'm not sure if that's a lifeboat or a little pleasure boat cruise in the background, I couldn't really see, but having those go across the frame as well, it makes landscapes a little bit more interesting if you can just get something that sets the scene. I quite like it, especially 3 horses, that's unusual. There aren't many brand new mirrorless cameras that I'd want to bring to a sandy beach, but this is meant to be fully dust sealed, weather sealed, so doing it. The 2470 stays nice and compact because it locks in like this, and then you actually have to unlock it. So that's now at 24, that's at 70, but to put it away you can lock it a bit smaller, which is nice in your bag to keep space down a little bit. I'm just taking pictures here. We've got the flip out screen, which is nice. Just taking pictures on the beach here, and I've noticed all this black stuff in the sand, which I just thought was pebbles first of all, but we've just seen a sign that this is a high risk fire area. Obviously this summer was incredibly dry, really high heat, and actually all these black things in the sand, it's charcoal, which I've never seen so evenly distributed in sand before. Got this on absolutely pin focus at the moment. You can have touch shutter on or off. I know that'll appeal to a lot of people. A lot of people don't like it on all the time, but I've got mine on at the moment, so I can just click here, and there you go, you've got touch shutter. I don't use that most of the time, but for things like this, when you see there's a little dog running across and you can lose him so easily, it's quite nice just being able to touch. And also sometimes if you do weddings, so you can have a nice wide shot of people on the dance floor and stuff, and you can suddenly need to focus very close or very far away, and you can just click. So you click on someone's face and that's it, you've got your image straight away, which it is a nice feature and it is useful at times. You can also, of course, turn touch shutter off and just use touch AF, which a lot of people do use that. It's very, very handy. This viewfinder is awesome. It's a 3.69 million dot, and it's 0.8 times magnification. So it's so big, it's so nice, really smooth. It's very nice to use, and you can really see if something's sharp or not sharp in it. I quite like to manual focus, especially if I'm doing any macro, and it's very easy to see if you've got it dead on or not. And I think that's a real downside of some viewfinders, that you can't quite see when you're manual focusing if you're dead on or not without using something like peaking. There's a little seagull footprint on the floor here. I'm just gonna take it. And I don't have a macro lens with me today, annoyingly, but this 24-70, I'm in manual focus and I've put it right to the sort of short end, the macro end. And as you can see, I'm incredibly close and I'm at 70mm, and that is sharp, which is really nice. And actually, something else I really like about this is the little pinpoint AF point right in the middle of the screen where you see where you're focusing. When you get closer or further away to something, it turns green. So like the Canon, you know, when you hold it down, the shutter button half down, and you get nearer or closer to something, it turns green when you're in focus, if you're in manual focus a lot of the time. With this, it does it regardless, so you don't have to be holding the shutter button half down. It will just go green the closer you get. I mean, I am holding it down purely because I want to take the shot when I'm dead on focus. But I really like that. I've said before, although peaking is incredibly effective, just personally, just from a personal point of view, I find it really distracting from the image because I like photography as a hobby. And so I want to enjoy taking the images, and this is really non-intrusive. My cameraman Tom has just lent me this lens, but I'm going to get a very quick picture of that big cloud over there, and then I think we're going to run away back to the car because it is starting to rain. We've just finished up down at the beach and we're now heading back to Northern Railway, which we've been past on the way here. Now, I think we did it just in time because the sort of heavens have opened and we've just checked the radar and it is not looking good for the next little while. So we figured a nice steam train ride would be a nice way to show off the 35mm f1.8 on the Z7, and also it would keep us from getting soaking wet. So the train is now moving. I think we made the right decision coming on here. It's got us out of the rain, and it's just a really nice place to test out this Z7. The lighting is very bright coming in, but also the carriage is quite dark, so it's very old sort of steam carriage. It's got the dark colours, very warm woods, that sort of thing. So it'll be an interesting place to test this camera. Now I've got the 24-70 on at the moment, but I'm going to put the 35mm on in a minute because I want to try that really shallow depth of field down the corridors and things like that. So we're going to have a test of these two, see what images we can get on the train. We do have a return journey as well because otherwise we'll be stuck in Swanage. So we can get a good hour out of this train journey and get some nice pictures. So we've moved down the carriage a little bit further. I'm swapping over to the 35mm now, and I'm just going to see what sort of shots we can get with that 35mm. I think it's going to be very nice. The 1.8, I had a play with it the other night when I was at home when this first got delivered, and it was lovely to use. So let's see what it can do. I'm at 1/80th of a second, f1.8, ISO 800. I'm going to have no problem that it's a little bit shaky here because we've got 5 stops of 5-axis VR in this, so it's really, really still. It's great VR. What do you think? Pretty much the same, aren't we? Yeah. f1.8 is an incredibly narrow depth of field when you're getting close to something with this 35mm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it up a little bit just so I can get a bit more depth of field, because this heater knob here has sort of the knob at the front and then the writing at the back, so I want to get that all in focus. I'm going to keep it at 1/80th of a second, but I'm just going to put the ISO up. The native range on this is ISO 64 to 25,600, so you do have a bit to play with, and it's got a back illuminated sensor as well, so it does do well in low light conditions. You don't have to struggle too much with noise, even if you have to pop the ISO up a little bit. So here we've got a really good example of what I was talking about on the beach earlier. The 35mm again can focus quite closely, not macro, but it's pretty close. And I've got a number on the seat here, this little 38, and I can show you now how it does the red to green thing when you zoom in, because you can see the screen a little bit easier on the train. So I'm in manual focus here, and you can see as I move through, the red square in the middle will suddenly just flicker green, and you can just see that's when it's in focus. There we go. So it's very sensitive, but it just gives you a really good idea of when you're in focus, and I think that's very unobtrusive. and very easy to use. So nice when you've got all these dark colours, the smoke coming through, cloudy sky, but you've got those nice red coupling bursting out. It's such a nice shot. So our very friendly conductor ordered us back onto the train very quickly after we got off, because we didn't realise, but it turns out this train had been running late. And we actually had about 3.5 minutes in Swanage, which meant we got a quick look at the station, quick look at a couple of engines that were smoking away on another track, which was lovely. But we are just about to start moving now back to Nordham, which I don't mind. It's incredibly pretty on this train. We managed to get a few shots at least. And then, unfortunately, no food though, so that is one downside. So the Z7's design is something Nikon have sort of prided themselves on, and I have to say, I do like it. There are certain cameras that you pick up and they take a bit of work to get used to. This hasn't. It's gone for a very classic mirrorless design, but it's unusual for Nikon. All of the controls to this side of the camera, which personally I prefer. I find Nikon DSLRs slightly harder to use. Again, that's totally a personal preference, but I know some people really love that about Nikon, some people don't, so that's something worth knowing about this camera, that it's really made for a lot more one-handed usage. You can sort of reach everything with your thumb and your fingers on this side of the camera. You've also got this nice top LCD screen. If I just turn it on, you can see there it's a black back LCD screen there, so you can see what your settings are, which again, I really enjoy that. I like that in a camera. And when I first went to mirrorless, my camera didn't have that, and I did miss it from a DSLR. But the grip of the camera is nice and deep. The thumb grip here is nice and deep again, so it just, again, supports that one-handed usage, especially when you're using sort of a prime like this 35mm. So yeah, it's a nice thing to use, nice thing to hold, very intuitive. And actually the buttons are very deep as well. So again, something really nice. When we were on the beach earlier, it started to rain, it was getting a bit cold, my fingers were getting a bit chilly, going slightly numb, even at this time of year, going slightly numb, and it was okay. I could still feel all the buttons perfectly, I could use it easily, so that's a really good point for me. And actually coming into winter a bit more, especially in Britain, you don't always want to be wearing gloves, so it's quite nice that you can feel the buttons when you do have them on, whereas a lot of cameras, that's a real struggle and you feel like you don't want to wear them. So that's nice, and it's just another point of comfort for a photographer, which is important. You have to like your gear. I wanted to come somewhere a little bit more dramatic with the Z7, and so you can't get much more dramatic than this. We're at Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland at sunset, and the waves are rolling in. I'm trying to get some of the spray splashing up over these rocks, but it's putting me in a precarious position as well. I don't want to get this covered in salt water, however weatherproof it is. I do like taking photos of other people taking photos. Maybe it's because I do a lot of photography, but I find it really interesting where people pick, where's like the spot for them. I love that up there, and the silhouette for me is great. Some people might find the fact that this 24-70 has to be undone before you can take pictures with it. Some people might find that annoying, but I quite like it. It just makes it a little bit smaller again. And when you're doing stuff like this, and it's sort of swinging around, we've been walking around all day, it's nice to know that you're not just going to randomly bash it on things. It just takes an extra little bit of size off of it, and that, a lot of the time, is the point in mirrorless for people, to remove that size, to make travelling with cameras way more accessible. We're really losing this light very quickly now. The images out of it are really nice. The colours in the JPEGs have just been lovely. The whole sort of thing of using it has just been nice, and that is important as a photographer, and it is something to consider. It's not always just what's the highest megapixels, what's got the highest this, that, numbers wise. You have to like it, and it has to do something for you when you go out and take photos, especially if you're an enthusiast, especially if you love what you do. There might not be a huge lens range at the moment of native lenses for this mount, but you do have the adapter, you do have all the Nikon lenses, there's so much support there. It's something that if you are considering full frame mirrorless, if you're considering mirrorless, you need to be looking at the Z range. This is a Z7, but of course the Z6 as well. Go into a store, go into a Wex Photo video store and go and pick one up and see how it feels to you, because for me, that's one of the best things about the Z7.